First things first, I'm on your side here. I do think this game should have been a free pack-in with the Switch 2 consoles, and it probably would have been better received if it was. But I played through the entirety of Welcome Tour, and I want to talk about why I think it's worth the money. At least if you're someone like me. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour was one of the launch titles that released alongside the new console, and the game immediately baffled everybody when it was confirmed to be a paid title in the initial reveal, myself included. This is cute, I like this. The twist is this isn't going to be free, you have to buy this. It's a paid...
Please check it out.
Bro,
I told you it was
why?
I just said like 5 seconds ago it's going to cost money.
I mean,
Now I've enjoyed my time with it so far, playing it in short bursts between Mario Kart or Cyberpunk and anything else I picked up at launch. So this is a little different from my usual video reviews, but I just want you to hear me out, and I'll share why I think at $10 I got my money's worth. Because since the full reveal of the Switch 2, the internet's been kind of playing the world's worst game at telephone, where one person will make a false statement and everyone will just go along with it without fact checking. So hopefully this could clear up some misconceptions about Welcome Tour. But before I start, if you're new here and like Nintendo content or Switch 2 coverage, it really helps out a lot if you're able to subscribe and leave a like on this video so I know that this is the kind of thing you want to see more of. So one of the best reasons to pick up Switch 2 Welcome Tour is that it's a kind of fun way to understand the new hardware and new features of the Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm sure this is what Nintendo had in mind, like they could tell you what's new, but why not show you with a couple demonstrations that you're actually able to try out for yourself? Take a look and see what's different compared to Switch 1 if you already owned one, or see what you can do for the first time if you're new to this console. Welcome Tour features a variety of demos, minigames, and little insights that you can read that tell you about the development of the Switch 2. And everything that Welcome Tour has to offer kind of caters to somewhat of a niche audience. Like you can kind of already tell from the trailers, but if this doesn't look like something you're going to be interested in from the start, you probably won't be interested in it later on. For the most part, this is less of a game and more of like a learning experience. And I'm somebody that likes to know the history of these things. I enjoy when Nintendo puts out their developer interviews because I like seeing how these games came to be. So to have an interactive version of that for a whole console is actually really cool. And yeah, you can already kind of test out some of these features like using mouse controls on the home menu or plugging in a camera and going to the system settings to see how that works. So it seems like for Welcome Tour you're really just paying for the overall presentation here. Welcome Tour is a collection of facts, minigames, and demos presented like a museum. You pick your character and you run around these giant models of Switch consoles and controllers. Leading up to the release, I saw a lot of people comparing this to Astro's Playroom, which is included on the PS5, and I don't really think that's a fair comparison to make. These are extremely different games. Astro's Playroom is a platforming adventure that makes use of the different DualSense features and capabilities to create an actual game around it. It has an optional museum which celebrates the history of PlayStation as a whole. And yeah, the game takes place inside of a PS5, but it's not like it revolves around showing off the tech that goes into making a PS5. It's all just subtle nods to it, like in the level names or in some of the visual elements. To progress in Welcome Tour, you need to collect all of the stamps in an area. You can actually skip the minigames and quizzes entirely and still be able to move on. The stamps are usually associated with a feature or a button within the piece of technology that you're standing on. So on the right Joy-Con you'll find that all of the face buttons have stamps, or on the console itself you'll see that the power button and volume buttons have stamps of their own. Nintendo's no stranger to including stamp rallies in their games. It's an activity that's pretty popular in Japan from what I can tell, and I personally make the connection to Nintendo and stamp rallies through Animal Crossing. Depending on what you're doing, the pace of the game can either be a breeze or feel like a drag. And as someone who's always been interested in Nintendo's history, there's a lot to see here. It's equally fun to learn something new as well as spot something that I may have already known. And I was surprised to see just how much of the Switch 2's games and hardware were influenced or inspired by Nintendo's past, even dating back to their business ventures over 50 years ago. It's interesting to see the design challenges that developers faced or why the Switch 2 was made the way that it is, such as the reason for the shape of the speakers or why certain chips were placed where they are within the console. But it's how we get to learn this information where the game kinda starts to fall flat. So let's talk about the insights. Alright, I'll admit it, the quizzes, or the insights as they're referred to, are where the game often just comes to a screeching halt. You get to read different fact sheets that pop up, sometimes at your own pace, and others have a hidden timer that you have to wait for an animation to play out. And once you read all of them, and you have to read all of them, you can take a quiz to test your knowledge about what you just learned. At first it was pretty interesting, but I found myself barely reading them towards the end. Some of the stuff they teach you is such a who cares kind of fact, but it's oddly charming that Nintendo took the time to try and teach it to us anyway. Other kinds of information even kind of repeats itself, such as when you're learning about the 120Hz display on the console screen, as well as when you're learning about the docked output. I'm not sure when or where you'd need to know this, but it's cool I guess. I can admit that some of the stuff they show you in the quizzes is kind of interesting. Like it's cool to see how some of the tech that I tried growing up, such as the voice chat in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl on the DS, had an influence on Nintendo's game chat decisions with Switch 2.
Trade you my Weevil from Munchlax.
Munchlax is pretty hot. Try again.
I appreciate learning the small details of the stuff you wouldn't really notice, such how one of the legs on the Switch 2 dock is actually made with plastic alongside the rubber legs, so that if you accidentally pull one of the cables, it's less likely to fall over. Again, a useless fact, but it's interesting to find out nonetheless. It shows how much care went into the console's design. The quizzes themselves aren't even difficult. They typically have one obviously wrong answer, so even if you weren't paying attention to the information you were supposed to read, you can usually figure out the correct answer. Process of elimination is huge here. And if you get anything wrong, you have to redo the quiz again and again until you eventually get a perfect score. Which is why I found it a little bit questionable why the game treats getting a perfect score like some sort of celebration. You literally have to get a perfect score or else you can't move on, so it's not even like, hey, you passed. Moving on to the minigames, this is probably where Welcome Tour has the most replayability. The minigames that it has to offer range from, hey, this was pretty cool, I didn't know the controller could do that, to, this shit's f***ing impossible. The minigames can get extremely challenging on their highest difficulties, but luckily it's so quick to reset over and over again that it made me want to keep going for the highest possible score. No matter how difficult it got, I was determined to see it through. Most of the minigames require you to use the Joy-Con 2 as a mouse, which makes sense considering that's pretty much the big gimmick of the Switch 2. They range from dodging spike balls as a UFO, to playing golf, guessing the frame rate that you're viewing, or even mimicking a breaststroke as you try to swim across a pool in a certain amount of time. Nintendo really made a coloring book that punishes you for coloring outside the lines. It's very hit or miss, as some are more fun and even more memorable than others, but it allows Welcome Tour to expose you to a variety of different playstyles and control schemes that can be achieved with the Joy-Con 2 hardware. The minigames start with 2 main medals for you to try and earn, with a third medal being unlocked that has even tighter restrictions on it. Finding out I was just within reach of the third medal inspired me to quickly restart and keep going until I hit the highest goal for most games, but others I'll need to return to with a bit more dedication. All that being said, it left me horrified when I would spend such a long time on a minigame, only to be met with an even more difficult version of it waiting for me afterward. So yeah, the minigames are pretty much where most of the replayability of Welcome Tour comes in, but I'm not too sure I'd be revisiting them in the future very often. Tech demos are the last of the main features to be found in Welcome Tour. These range from showing off how HD Rumble can replicate the feeling of shaking maracas, how the Joy-Con can replicate classic Mario sounds without a speaker, or how it can make it feel like you're cutting a log with a saw, feeling each of the individual saw teeth as you pull back on the Joy-Con. Compared to the minigames in Welcome Tour, the tech demos are open-ended and allow you to mess around with them for as long as you'd like. There's a small list of objectives for you to try and accomplish, but there's no punishment or reward for not getting them all. If you do get them all, you can earn a medal. There's not much depth to them, but I enjoyed playing around with the tech demos for a long time. One of my favorite demos shows off the 4K display and has you playing through stage 1-1 of the original Super Mario Bros. At its original resolution. It's crazy to think how far we've come when you see how small the gameplay is on the screen we're given to work with. Another has you shooting off fireworks to demonstrate the HDR capabilities. I mentioned earlier, it's all stuff you could probably find somewhere else in another game or in another feature on the console, so it's really the presentation that you're buying here. Some of the tech demos and minigames are easily my favorite parts of Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. So far it's been a great way to show people who are unfamiliar with the Switch 2 what it's all about and what makes it different from the Switch I previously had. Something I saw quite a bit of discourse about regarding Welcome Tour is that you need to spend hundreds of dollars on accessories in order to complete it. The accessories being the Switch 2 camera, a controller with the additional GR and GL buttons on the back, and a 4K TV. And to say the game can't be completed without it is just untrue. While you're exploring, you meet a character, before you even reach the area that features tech not included in the console bundle, who tells you that if you need to skip a level, you can input a specific button combination to bypass it. You still get to learn about the accessories and how they work, but it gives you the option to skip the minigames and the demos. Again, it's all optional too, but if you wanted the full experience, you would need to shell out the extra cash. There's a lot packed into Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. If you're someone who strives for 100%, there's not really any sort of goal to work towards. The more medals you earn seem to just be visual or bragging rights. So just to reiterate, yes, I do think this should have been free. And if it was included for free alongside the console, it probably would have been better received. Don't let the internet fool you. It's not bad, it's just a bit underwhelming, I suppose. I've seen people complain about there being such few new offerings at the Switch 2 launch, and while I don't necessarily agree, we definitely have a bright future to look forward to. It's fun for someone like me who enjoys learning about the history and why things do what they do. But if you aren't already interested in Welcome Tour, it's unlikely you probably ever will be. It also would have been nice if it were cheaper, but I think $10 is fair for what's provided. And it is a Nintendo game, so who knows if it'll ever go on sale. For what it is, Welcome Tour is a fun concept, and I would love to see Nintendo try something similar to show us the ins and outs of their other hardware. But if you like this video and want to see more gaming or Switch 2 content, it really helps out a lot if you're able to like and subscribe. But that's all for now, and I'll see you guys next time.